Okay, so track and the bit that SPJ is really looking forward to. So just for reference, I'm painting the chairs in NATO brown, and then I'm washing over with the thinned out buff to make the concrete kind of feel.
Jimmy seems to think you might like this, so I want to paint the tips of the very top of these red, and they're super fine. I can't really see them unless I'm using a magnifying glass. So we're going to do an old trick, and that is to coat a little flat surface like a little stick with some red paint, not too much. Be very careful not to slip while doing this. Am I going to do this so the camera sees it? You just got to trust me, because I can't do it without it. Let's do it that way around. So I'm going to put that on there, and then I'm just going to press down like that, and then I'm going to put that one on there and just press down like that, and that way you get a stamp print, and it just kicks the top of those with a tiny little bit of red. I don't know if the camera is actually going to pick that up on this on video. Certainly picks it up on a still. So that's what I'm doing.
And for reference, I'm using red X7, another Tamiya acrylic colour.
Okay, so how are we going to get all this lot together? Well, what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to, these are just some sacrificial that we use somewhere else. Some rail that I've very carefully chamfered the end, so that makes it really quite easy to slide it in to a piece of track like this. And here's the other one, if I can get it in. Okay, so there's the track slid in, and I've got to do that with these, and I'm going to this will be a little bit tricky. I won't be doing it to camera because there'll be little trace elements of paint in there, so I feed them all onto these pieces of track, which is the length of the track that's required. Then I'm going to stick it in, then I'm going to pull these out, and then I'm going to put the correct prototypical length pieces in, and instead they've all been pre-rusted up. There'll be little bits of scratches in here and there to be touched in as paint gets scratched off as it slides through, but it'll just be a little bit of touching up here and there. I'm going to trim the ends of it. Now I've removed the sacrificial rails, I'm going to trim the ends of these with my Dremel, so I'm not putting too much stress. If you go in there with a saw, you'll just pull them left and right and shatter them. Right, ballasting, the fun bit. Now, I've been talking to True to Scale. There'll be more to say about True to Scale later, but I wasn't quite sure about the range they had, about whether or not there was something that I could use for what I wanted. So I had a chat with Stu and Steve, and that's why it's got Chris here. This is the TT120 Experimental Grey. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Right, so this is Experimental Grey. It's now, what's different about Experimental Grey? Well, I should really leave it on the on the grass. Quite fresh. Here are the other sample bags I've got from them, which we've been discussing stuff. So that's standard grey. You can see it's got a few black bits in, which a lot of people do quite like the blacky bits. It's not exactly what I wanted. What's that one? That one's doesn't know what the name is, but that's one of the red ones. They use them up in Scotland. The TT gauge ballast pink grey. Oh, that one is called. Doesn't actually say what. This is Lanarkshire red granite. That one. This one is a brown grey, and then this one is a dark grey, and this one is light grey. Now, light grey is what I like, but I think it shows the black bits off a bit too much, which is why I've gone with the custom grey ballast, which has, I think they used a magnet to get a lot of the black out. So we might have some fun with these. Right, so what's the big thing about true to scale? Well, it's not a big thing, but it's a nice thing. They've got a very good range of flavours in their range, and they've also they've put a lot of effort into actually doing some size testing, so that the grain size is a very good match for 1 to 120 scale. They do 00 at, I believe, 176. Although seeing as it's being put in HO track, I don't see that. Seems like a bit of a waste of time. Should have done it in HO scale. No, I'm teasing. I'm not having a go at the 00 community much. And they do engage at 148, I think. Now, whereas you've got fine and medium in other ranges. Now, I've been using N gauge stuff in the past, and to be honest with you, the N gauge stuff I've been using is slightly bigger than this. So I think that's the difference with true to scale. I've done some tests on this. It's quite not hydrophonic, not hydrostatic, hydroscopic. It's grease lightning. No, it's hydroscopic, so it does mean that it absorbs the glue well, so that helps with breaking the surface tension, which no doubt, this is so small, no doubt bits of it will float up. But yeah, I'm quite intrigued to see this in operation, so we better get on with it, I suppose. I'm going to put it in one of my special tubs. If I've got any left. Quite like that. I think that will take a little bit of coloration quite nicely, I think. Right. Let's relax and enjoy myself, because contrary to popular belief, from some people, I really quite enjoy doing ballasting, especially on a small scale like this. We're just going to stick a little bit in the middle, bomb like that. Okay, and then we're going to get my little dusty brush. Now, what I really want to achieve with what I'm doing here is I want to make sure that we cover these webs, but that we have a gap underneath the rail, because that's the prototypical look that I'm going for. Right, time to play with resin. This is the exciting bit. Right, we'll go through some of the stuff I'm going to be using and why and how, and then obviously there'll be a video of me pouring it, right? But we're going to talk about the resin. Hold on a second, I'm going to cut it here and go and get something that I'm going to show you not to use, okay? Okay, so let's start off with, let's have a little chat about the resins, okay? So this one is Realistic Water from Woodland Scenics. So no mixing, surface dries, firm and clear, self-leveling, minimal shrinkage, water-soluble, non-toxic, customised with water tints. All very true, except I would argue that the surface dries, firm and clear bit. I have actually used this. It is simple to use. It's the easiest thing on the market to use, and it's good for a beginner. And also, if you're not making a big super smooth mill pond, then maybe this is just fine, and it is just fine for dribbling on. We use this on the diorama that myself, Craig, and Jenny made, but it does take a long time to go off, and it never really seems to ever really go off. When I say go off, I mean go really super hard. It always seems to be easy to mark, knock, and before long, like let's say if you were taking a layout to a show, by the end of the season, it's going to look as rough as a badger's backside. So I wouldn't recommend this if you want a seriously good surface. Woodland Scenics, however, do make another one which is called Deep Pour, and that's what you've seen us use on Camelot. And we'll do a little cut here, some of the pictures of Camelot, and that works really well. It's not the shiniest. It's pretty hard. It's good for depth. It will do up to, so I think it's 12 mil, so basically half-inch pours, and it mixes really well with all their tints, the range of tints they do. I think I use the olive drab one here, or mucky water. I'm not sure what they call it, but that's what it basically looks like. And it's reasonably hard, but you have to remember all these are resin. You're not pouring glass, so these things do eventually scuff up because you're constantly hoovering them and trying to keep them clean for shows and whatever. And it's a good product, but it's actually really quite pricey. But the price actually doesn't mean that you get a whole lot of backup from the retailer you buy it from, and it also means that you get they've done some really good videos on it, and you get the plastic cups, and you get gloves, and you get all that kind of malarkey. So that's like a whole. If you're only doing this once, it's not a bad thing because you haven't got to buy all the other bits and bats. However, there are alternatives. Now that is epoxy resin, and there are the people who sell epoxy resins. Now, there's one particular company called Easy Composites, who I've been buying from for years and years. They do quite a range of resins. That's one of the problems that people have, is that if they don't know about these materials, and you can quite get on with your life without having material knowledge about resins if you're not a professional model maker. But it makes it quite difficult sometimes to understand what you need. Now, if you do read on their website their various resins, they do, I think, quite a good job of explaining actually what a lot of these products do. And there's a number that I could have used on this, and I've chosen a particular one. I'll talk about that in a moment. Yeah, so Easy Composites. Now, you'll also buy more for less money. In fact, enough to buy yourself a box of nitrate gloves and a stack of cups. These are just cheap pipe ones from the local supermarket. And why have I got 2 cups? Well, because we can do something called double cupping. The reason why we double cup is whenever you mix these resins together, it's almost impossible to see whether or not you've got them perfectly mixed, and you don't want to go thrash mixing them because then you get loads of bubbles in, which are a pain. But you can deal with that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I've always, and if you go onto any of these websites, such as people like Easy Composites, they will say double cup, double cup. I wonder if there's even any instructions on the side of this. You'll probably turn around and say something on there. Always read the instructions, weigh accurately, mix thoroughly, and double pot the mix. The reason why you double pot a mix is because, like I said, you don't always fully mix it thoroughly, and you can't see that you haven't mixed it thoroughly. And there's invariably a layer of or less cured or with less curing agent mixed into it on the sides of the cup. So I'll mix more than I need, mix as much as possible, and pour it into here, and then do a bit more of a mix in this, and then I'll pour from this one. This one becomes disposable. All right, and that way you've got less chance of having those weird little shapes and weird soft bits, which is what happens when you get an area of resin that hasn't got as much curing agent in as the rest of its surrounding buddies. Now, the particular product that I'm going to use is Glass Cast 3. It's a clear epoxy coating resin. Now, this is because the Woodland Scenics one, the mixable one, the deep water, is an epoxy. This one, you get more for your money, like I said. It's only 5mm thick, but it's a glazing resin. It's for going over the top of stuff. So you get a super shiny finish, and it's super hard. It's one of the hardest. There probably are other manufacturers, but it's the one that I've probably been using this for, or the variations of this for the past 10, 15 years maybe. Anyway, this is what we're going to be using. A couple of little things we're going to do is you've got to make sure that it's not too cold. Fortunately, I've got a kiln in here, and with a room temperature of 20 degrees. Perfectly fine. This has been sitting here for days. This all feels perfectly fine. If it's too cold, and it can be cloudy, or it can pull away and shrink from it. You want to make sure these are bone dry. So this has sat on the Arga for a while, so it is bone dry and it is nice and warm. Again, you don't want any damp in it. All right. And if you leave it in the pot too long, because it's so thick and it's only supposed to be poured at 5mm, it will start to exotherm and cook off. All right. Always use it in a well ventilated area. Put a mask on, and obviously use rubber gloves. Okay. Now, once you've poured it, I like to. It's a bit like seeing your baby, how it develops. I'll be sticking with this for a while and checking out for any air bubbles that come out of the talus or out from underneath things. And to pop that, you can use things like a kitchen aid torch. It's like that's got a naked flame on it, and you really don't want to. Although these, I don't think these ignite now. I think these are all made out of stuff that doesn't ignite, but it does smoke off and melt, and will look nasty. So I don't want to go in here anywhere with any big long naked flame. So I use one of these as a microtherm. All right, it's basically got. It's still a flame of sorts. You've got a lighter in there, and you are still lighting gas. But with that grill on the top, it's very focused. I don't know if you can see that in there. It's very focused, and you can get in quite close and neat without actually cooking off the rest of the layout. So this is one of my best pieces of kit. Having that focused heat I find very useful, particularly if I want to. I use it. Electricians use them for focused heat shrink. All right, and there's loads of other little things you can do for focused heat if you want to heat an area of plastic and you don't want loads of flame, that kind of thing. Right, how am I going to shore up the sides? Well, I'm going to make sure it's all nice and clean and flat. I've cut some sturdy plastic out of, I think it's those, what are they called? They're called Corgi Rail Masters. So I've cut some plastic. It's quite thick. It's about 1.5 mm, so it's quite stable. Now you can use thin polythene, the sort of stuff you get on a packet, like the sort of thing you have on a window for a wagon box. But you're going to need to support that if you don't want it to bow out. The deeper you go, the more it's going to bow. Now, the deepest this is going to be is probably, I might stretch the product going about 6 mil or something, but that's going to be stuck there. Now I'm going to stick that to there using some stab tape. It's not really called stab tape, it's what we used to call it in the industry, which is basically something stuck to a blanket. I won't say what the something word is, but it's basically, it's a high pressure, high strength adhesive, double-sided. It's really a layer of adhesive on a backing. It's not so much tape itself, right? Something that's also, I think, quite important is whatever piece of scrap plastic you're going to use, and however tempting it is to use this shiny piece of plastic, I'll always coat a layer of sellotape over it. Why? Because I know this epoxy resin won't attack the sellotape, all right? I don't know if that epoxy resin is going to attack this plastic. Right. If it attacks the plastic, then it becomes a real struggle to take it off, and you've got to do lots of repair work and sanding, all that malarkey. Stick some sellotape over your piece of plastic. It doesn't even have to be clear. I'm only doing it clear so I can see what's going on. Hopefully that all makes sense. I'm going to got to make sure that it's absolutely bob on. So I'm going to use, hopefully this spirit level is more visible. So I'm going to make sure the whole board is absolutely spot on, so it's dead flat. Nothing gives a layer away if the water's kind of going down a slope. And of course, when you get high definition photographs or it's your own layout, you know it's at a slope. Other people might not notice it, but you do. It's probably not so bad here because we don't have any lines of walling like you might have in a harbour. We probably would get away with it, but I don't want to get away with it. I want to get it right. Other things, what else? All right, so you'll see some digital scales here. What I like about Easy Composites is they will give you a mix ratio, resin and hardener, volume 100 to 57, and by weight every 100 parts to 50, right? And I find weight more accurate than volume, because volume, if you get a cup with markers on them, you go buy yourself a box of 20, right, and you check them out and you'll see that they can be varied for up to a couple of mil. And so it says 30 fluid ounces or whatever, or milliliters or whatever. It's a little slip for our American cousins. And if you've got something that's basically a 5 mil area at the bottom here, and you've got a 2 mil variation in where that printing has started, that's quite a considerable difference to actually help the volume. So I never do volume, because unless you buy really expensive, very accurate volume marked cups. And even then, you've got to make sure that when you're pouring it, it's bob on. If it's at a slope, that'll give you a false reading of how many ounces, whereas how many milliliters. But if you do by weight on digital scales, there's no messing about, no tears. Okay. I might do a little bit of pouring. I'm unlikely to, because most of this is going to be dribbling. I'm going to be using, these are disposable syringes. You've seen me use these before. It was like a little rubber plunger on the end. And so I shall be, means I can go, it's probably out of the camera now, but up there I can go up the pipe and dribble some till it comes out. I can go up the pipe up inside here and dribble some till it comes out. And I can really control where I'm going to be putting those small bits of resin, because there are areas of here that are going to be above the water surface. I want to make sure it finds its own, it's not rolling off of a rock and leaving a permanently wet bit, because it will. So that's why I'm going to use a little syringe. Something else is important, I think, is to you've really got to mix these up. And I would suggest, what I tend to do with these is they do have a lot of cost information on the back. Make sure you dispose of these properly, okay? In your general waste bin, not down the drain or anything like that, anything stupid like that. I will be making sure that these are up to temperature, so I'm going to get a bowl of, I don't know, what about 80 degrees, something like a coffee kind of hot water, and let these soak through for a while and so they'll be doing that while I'm getting the rest of my stuff together. Okay. Okay, so there's our little goldfish tank. The water is probably only going to go as far as about there. because that's sort of like a beached area. That's not going to be underwater, so it's just over here. But I don't know exactly. We're going to, because that's the other exciting thing about doing this, is you just don't know what the pour is going to do. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my tea whilst the resin warms up in the warm water, and then I'm going to come back and do one last hoover and then mix up some resin. Okay. Right. So what's this? Well, this is a 11mm thick piece of glass that made up an old sign that came out of the, well, it's still in the top of the White Tower of London, which I supervised the installation of, and I think one of these timelines was wrong for all these different things, and so it got swapped out for the curator said, no, that's wrong, you need to change that number, and so this was going to be thrown away, and I thought, nah, this will be I might keep this. And it's perfect for situations like this big thick piece of glass, because it means I can more easily get this base bob on. Now, although that technically really needs to go, is that? Yeah, there we go. So bob on there, and it's weird, isn't it? Is there something on the bottom of that? Because a minute ago, yeah, well, it's in the ballpark. Still, yeah. It's in the ballpark for me. Right, let's put this on, and we shall. When we'll start mixing some resin up. I know none of you are going to believe me, but I turned the bloody phone off. So all of this pouring and all this delicate mucking about with tweezers and with my pipette and pouring resin down there so that it naturally poured out of the gully and down through here and then down there and then down round here and then working on the island, and that's how deep it is. On all that stuff, I've got none of it. I'm sorry, seriously though, I'm gutted. But the resin pour worked. It was, all that yap. Yeah, there's my syringe. Not so much resin. So I reckon I used approximately, to do this lot, I used about 150 millilitres of resin. Let's put the foam around the other side, and where is it? There's the resin down there. Jakers, I'm really sorry, guys. I can't take it out and do it again. Oh God, what an idiot! What an absolute prize plum. Not a peach, a plum. Now, something you will notice when you do resin is it will always creep up the bank until you get this kind of like glossy bank, which we don't want. So I'm going to go over that with some Humboldt clear matte varnish. It's a water base. It's really quite simple stuff to use, but you've got to keep shaking it. You've got to keep the matting agent active. So I'll be going over all of that. I mean, it's a little bit dull, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all been knocked back. Okay. You've guessed it. I didn't film that either. 15 hours standing behind a till for 5 days, not seeing a wheel turn at Goodwood in the rain has fried my brain. Sorry.
And that's all there is to tell. I'll be on my way now, sir. I've got urgent business in the south. I have to meet a man at Marlborough Junction.